Now it's time to find out what's going on outside of the US in Meanwhile In. Meanwhile, in Ukraine, their next president might literally be a comedian, and that's no joke. With just over half of the ballots counted early on Monday, Volodymyr Zelensky had 30.2% of the votes. The incumbent president, Petro Poroshenko, was in a distant second place with 16.6%, followed by former Prime Minister Yulia Tymoshenko at 13%. And so this vote could see a comedy actor with no political experience move a step closer to becoming the country's next president. Very briefly, the substance: I don't have the time or the expertise to break down the various positions of all of the candidates, but despite the fact that this guy is a comedian and has no political experience, he seems far more reasonable on the issues than a number of the other candidates running in that race, including some who are just out and out far right, either white nationalists or state nationalists, or very problematic for a number of different reasons. This is not a done deal, but he seems preferable to some of the alternatives. And also, if anyone in the US looks at what's going on in the Ukraine and says, those fools, they're electing someone from TV to be their president, glass houses and all that. They exist both in the Ukraine and the US. Meanwhile, in Meanwhile, we may have to update our Mars B-roll because they're not just going to have rovers soon, they're going to have a helicopter too, which is bizarre but apparently true. So they're going to have both a new rover and a small little flying drone, and they want to test the capabilities of this new helicopter. So they had an engineering team behind the mission remove all of the nitrogen, oxygen, and other gases from inside a space simulator and injected it with carbon dioxide to, as close as they can, mimic the Martian atmosphere. They also try to do that with gravity too, and then they flew this drone around, which sounds like good science and a good time. That just sounds like fun. And so this next mission, Mars 2020, it's seeking to answer key questions about the habitability of Mars, not only in the past, but also in preparation for the arrival of human settlers. The ground-based rover is going to drill and collect rock and soil samples on Mars's surface, and then keep them in a cache for future retrieval. I'm assuming for future drones, but also for eventually within the next 15 years or so, when humans actually make it there. I do have to say, the more we focus on the day-to-day issues in the US and around the world, it makes me feel a little bit uncomfortable to talk about this sort of exploration throughout the solar system, but I am still a nerd, and I think it's awesome, and I do think that there's a lot that we can learn. I don't think that having some sort of backup option is necessarily a bad thing for our species going forward, but overall, I like big, far-reaching goals like this. I do think are inspirational to the next generation of scientists and engineers, and I do think we need this sort of thing to continue to inspire them. And so if it takes helicopters on Mars, I'm down for that. Meanwhile, in the oceans, for the second time in just 2 weeks, a dead whale has been found chock full of plastic, which is not how they are supposed to come. In the latest grisly discovery off the coast of Sardinia, Italy, late last week, there were roughly 49 pounds of plastic inside a female sperm whale, along with a dead fetus, which had potentially been killed before she was killed due to the contamination, and she was apparently the fetus was in a advanced state of decay at that point. So what do you get in your 49 pounds of plastic? Well, you get garbage bags, fishing nets and lines, tubes, a bag of washing machine liquid. And so that's an issue when humans consume that stuff. Also really bad for the whales too. And this is not a surprise, it's not new, of course, it's happened a number of times, but when we continue to load the ocean up with more and more of our garbage, it is going to have more and more of an effect on the species that inhabit it. And so 49 pounds with this whale. The previous one about 2 weeks ago had 88 pounds. It is a gigantic problem that we in the US don't really pay attention to, but it is taken seriously in other places. I remember while I was doing my documentary series in the Arctic in a town in Norway, they had a massive sculpture, a life-size sculpture of a whale made entirely out of trash taken from the oceans. This is a serious issue, and we should take it seriously too. Thank you very much for watching this clip from The Damage Report. If you liked it, don't forget to subscribe to this channel and ring the bell on YouTube to get notifications of our new videos. And of course, you can catch the full Damage Report live every weekday at 1 p.m. Eastern, 10 a.m. Pacific on TYT Network on YouTube TV.